The devil is beautiful. He must be, after all. If he weren't, men wouldn't fall into his charms and deceit. In all of modern shonen, I want you to think about who the best villains are. There's Muzan from Demon Slayer, Sukuna from JJK, or Shigaraki from My Hero, but head and shoulders above all of them, I believe that Makima is the greatest shonen villain of this generation's anime. In this video, we'll be going over why I believe that is, and how Makima represents the antithesis of everything the story wants to tell us. There are two very important things that we need to talk about before we can dive into the rest of the analysis. While this is a Makima video, she is so thoroughly wrapped up in the themes of Chainsaw Man that it would be impossible to talk about her without the larger message of the story. The first thing we need to go over is Makima's identity. While she is a character, I think it actually does a disservice to analyze her in the same way we did for our Gojo, Armin, or Denji videos. While we are still going about it in a similar way, we need to address the elephant in the room. Makima is not human. Whereas every other character we've talked about is meant to reflect humanity in one way or another, Makima isn't, and Fujimoto doesn't write her in such a way either. Makima is a devil, a concept. She is the embodiment of control and conquest and all domination within the world. You might think that's not so different, as characters generally tend to have a central theme which in turn can make them represent a concept. However, in this case, Makima is the concept. There is an argument to be made that Makima does have some personal agency, as the Control Devil and Makima herself seem to be different entities, but I don't believe that really changes much of what Makima does within the larger narrative. This creates a few guidelines that we should be aware of going forward. The first is that Makima will naturally have character traits that are easy for us to assume. For example, she will reasonably be an excellent leader or a convincing speaker. On the flip side, it also provides room for stronger subversions. This is something we see done to great effect in anime like Re:Zero, where the witches express themselves in a way that we aren't conditioned to expect. For example, the Witch of Lust actually being a demure young woman, not a promiscuous lady of the night. The second thing we need to take a look at is her desire. Makima's motivation within Chainsaw Man is to use the Chainsaw Devil in order to erase concepts of negative ideas from existence. That is the special ability, so to speak, of the Chainsaw Devil. Earning control over it would mean gaining the power to cleanse the world of its worst qualities. This would include things like death, fear, hunger, and something else we'll come back to in a little bit. But I want you to remember this for later. Now, we've already talked a lot about Denji in our video solely about him, but it's important to bring him up as Makima is designed to represent Denji's complete opposite. The reason I believe Makima works so well is actually because of him. Like we mentioned, she is the Control Devil. Manipulation and domination are her fields of expertise, and she uses both perfectly in order to get what she wants. But first, let's reestablish everything that Denji actually wants from the beginning of the series. He wants to be loved. He wants to have a home. He wants some form of stability. He wants physical relationships. He wants emotional ones. He wants a family. He wants emotional intelligence. And uniting all of it, Denji wants to become human. And from the very moment Makima's arms embrace Denji, that desire slowly starts to become a reality. We watch Makima build up desire and awareness in this young boy. We watch her provide him a home, food, and family. Aki is his older brother. They make food for each other, keep each other safe, do chores, or even just go shopping and live day by day with one another. Likewise, Power is his sister. They comfort each other, help each other learn, and both walk the path to becoming human together, as Power is the blood fiend. Through Power and Aki, we watch Makima give Denji all he's ever wanted. When you watch these scenes of the three of them going shopping, or see these panels of Power and Denji cooking for Aki, you get this incredible sense of family, of comfort. Almost as though this is exactly how life is supposed to be. And for 79 chapters, that's exactly how it was. And so Makima took Denji, a young boy who knew no comfort nor warmth, and showed him love. She took a dog and taught him how to become human. She did it slowly, bit by bit, providing him a whole nother perspective on life. She found a boy at his weakest, someone who didn't only not have love, but also didn't understand it. She watched with the rest of the audience as we witnessed this young boy learn to become human. In other words, Denji was clay in Makima's hands, formless and without identity. And so she molded him, shaped him into something with purpose, and let him strengthen within that new identity. Freshly baked clay is beautiful, should the artistry be intentional and well crafted. But unlike its unmade form, it is delicate and terribly, horribly fragile. In Chapter 74, Makima uses her manipulation and control over the situation to get Division 4 in the fight against the Gun Devil. And it's over the course of the next 5 chapters that Aki, the character serving as part of Denji's family, is taken over by the Gun Devil, and Denji is forced to kill him, forced to destroy his life, the one that Makima gave to him, with his own hands. But it was Makima that made this happen. It's at this point in the story, toward the climax of Part 1, that Makima starts to take away everything she gave to Denji. It started with Aki's death, as everything that transpired there was because of her puppeteering. The very next chapter features life after Aki's death. It starts off with that signature distraction we talked about in the Denji video. He talks about how they rented a place with the money from Aki's will, how they have food and play games and watch movies and have so much fun together. But then Fujimoto drops the facade. The moment Denji leaves, there are 17 panels that simply communicate to the reader that Denji is now alone with his thoughts. We watch him walk to the store and grab an ice cream. The paneling is very slow, and the repetitive nature of the similar shots communicating similar ideas, I believe, is meant to give the reader this sense of time slowing down. It is now when the realization finally hits Denji, and the emotions start to swarm him. I killed Aki. I want you to look at these panels of Denji throwing up after realizing and his chronic sorrow here in this scene. Once again, Denji is brought down to his lowest. And unfortunately for him, the devil excels in hunting the weak and the vulnerable. Over and over and over again, when Denji is in his pit of despair or confused on what to do, Makima appears, ready to mold him once again. She consoles him, comforts him, and eventually leads him back to her apartment where the two are greeted by Makima's dogs. She warms him there, and feeds him, and surrounds him with a comfortable environment, so much so that Denji's depression is temporarily soothed. He feels safe among Makima's dogs, where food is assured and love is abundant. He expresses this the best way he can, saying, "My brain feels a little better because of you." It's at this point that Makima offers to grant Denji a wish for killing the Gun Devil. He considers for a few moments, then whispers out a few words. "A dog. I want to be your dog." Dialogue like this has been used to mask sad moments or contrast something serious up till this point in the series, but I think that right here Fujimoto drops the act entirely. I want you to think about what exactly this means by everything that isn't being said. To be Makima's dog is for every day to be like this moment he is experiencing now. He'll get her praise, warmth, and food always, everything he ever wanted at the beginning of the story. But this is a solution he's reached after becoming human through the connection with Aki and power. In the Denji video, I took away text from one of the manga panels and threw up new text that I believe better communicated what Fujimoto was telling us. And here I'm going to do the same thing, because I believe Fujimoto has left us part of this to fill in. I believe what's actually being said here is, I want to be your dog, because being human is too hard. When Makima asks what he means by this in the next chapter, this is what he says. I don't want to think for myself anymore. I used to only think about what I had to do not to die. Now it's like there are 10,000 things to consider, and it's really exhausting. I killed Aki because it looked like 100 people were going to die if I didn't stop him. But once I calmed down and thought about it really, really hard, I realized there might have been a better way. Maybe Aki only died because I was stupid. If I'd never become friends in the first place, I'd never had felt this crappy. Denji experienced what it was like to be a real person, connected and understood by others around him, and now that he has lost that, he realizes that the pain of that loss is far greater than the pain of his old life where he couldn't lose what he never had. He is giving up his agency in this scene for ignorance that happens to feel good for now. And I believe it is this panel alone that makes the ending climax of part 1 so powerful and impactful, but we'll get back to that in 1 second, because unfortunately, this scene doesn't end there. Makima leads Denji to her apartment door. Slowly, she drags him and the audience forward inch by inch until eventually Denji opens the door. It's Power, with a cake for him. It's his birthday soon. He's never celebrated a birthday before. Power is one of, if not the only woman in Denji's life with whom he has a relatively normal and healthy relationship with. She is the last family he has now after Aki's death, which is why the shock and horror of Makima killing her is so chilling and tragic. To me, everything that has happened and Denji has said over the last 2 chapters is paid off right here. It's almost as though after Denji says he wants to be her dog, she is saying, then you do not need her. You are no longer human. You are my dog. Because humans are capable of family and connection. Animals are not. Makima then leads Denji back to her couch where he sits in shock. It's from there she begins to laugh and explain everything. The promise that Denji made to Pochita to live out his dream was actually a double contract, and in order for Makima to get to the Chainsaw Devil, she needed him to break that contract. This is where she fully explains everything to the audience in detail, completely tearing off that veil of everything silly or funny there might have been about this series. She says, and I quote, "I asked myself how I could break your contract. How could I make it that you are no longer capable of living a normal life? Quite the challenge, isn't it? After all, you felt plenty of happiness living in poverty with Pochita. So I decided to begin by making you a lot happier. I gave you a job and money and fed you lots of delicious food. I provided you a family that would love you. Aki became your good brother and Power was your bratty little sister. I wanted to make that level of happiness your new normal. And then I wanted to destroy the whole thing. Any happiness or normalcy you experience from this point on? If you overcome your grief and make new friends, I'll kill them immediately. If you get married and start a family, I won't allow your wife and children to live long. I will be the one to create, and then to destroy it all." It's that scene and exchange in Makima's apartment that makes the ending showdown between Denji and Makima so impactful. And it's done in such a creative and subtle way that it really does make me think that Fujimoto is a modern storytelling genius. In chapter 93, Denji is waiting in a cemetery for Makima to arrive and for the fight to commence. Before the fight, however, the two exchanged a few lines, and the first words that Denji says to her were powerful enough that I nearly started to tear up. Remember that Makima's goal is to make a world where death and fear and hunger do not exist. A perfect world where humanity no longer experiences pain. And so he asks her, in this ultra awesome perfect world you're going to make, will there still be crappy movies? This line shook me to my very core because I believe all of the meaning of Chainsaw Man is wrapped up in Denji's words right here, and Denji's next actions as well. If you recall earlier, I mentioned there is a detail in Makima's goals that I wanted you to remember for later. This is that moment. And that goal is the erasure of bad movies from existence. You see, after Denji's question, Makima says she thinks the world will be better off without bad movies. This reply solidifies to Denji that he must kill Makima. But why? Well, this line is actually a callback to earlier in the story, back in chapter 39. The story follows Makima and Denji going to the movie theater around noon and watching back-to-back flicks until nighttime. The first movie was a comedy, but neither of them found it very funny. The second was a tearjerker, but once again, none of them really liked it that much. It's here that Makima has some very important dialogue. After failing to connect with the story a few times, Denji remarks that maybe he just doesn't understand movies. To which Makima replies, "That's how it is for me too. I only really get into maybe 1 in the 10 movies I try. But there have been times where that one has changed my life." And then finally, at the end of the night, Denji happens to see a scene. A small scene, nothing insane is really happening, but something about it plucks at the tenderest heartstrings in Denji's soul. He finds himself connected to it, and somehow, he's crying. He looks over to see if Makima notices him, and sees that she is crying also. And so the question that needs to be answered is, what is a bad movie, or rather, what does Chainsaw Man determine is a bad movie? Well, I want you to think about the situation presented in chapter 39. Denji over and over again is experiencing what he considers to be crappy movie after crappy movie. Nothing about it really touches him, and so he can't say that the movie was good or he got into the film. But there was that one movie. That one shining moment where he felt seen or understood or whatever else that made him cry. And it's because of this that I think chapter 39 acts as a microcosm for the entirety of part 1. Because the only way that Denji knows he saw a good movie is because he was able to experience bad movies. I believe this whole chapter is actually one big metaphor, an allegory for the true dynamic at play between Denji and Makima. In the metaphor, you can equate bad movies to negative things that humanity experiences. Things like death and fear and hunger, but without those things, without knowing them and understanding them and living alongside them, Denji would not have ever known what it was like to be alive or feel loved or feel satisfied. He was able to love and be loved because he knew what it was like to be hurt and to be rejected. Without all of the pain in his life, he would not have been able to become human. I believe that Denji, in chapter 93, by asking this question and choosing to kill Makima, he is actually choosing something very important. He is choosing, for the last time, to be human. Let's take a look at the scene in Makima's apartment. Again, when Denji asked to be a dog, he asked to never experience any bad things again. To not need to think and live in warmth and love for the rest of his mindless days. In that scene, Denji rejects humanity by rejecting all potential sorrow and heartbreak. But here I believe that when Denji asks about movies, that isn't actually what he's talking about. I think what Denji is asking is, in this world of yours, does pain still exist? Does that thing that contrasts all that is good still live in this new world Makima wants to create? Because even though Denji killed Aki and he watched power die in front of him, the time he lived with them and cared with them, well, to use the story's own metaphor, it was the one good movie that changed Denji's life. And it was worth 100 bad movies. He wouldn't have known what true love and family was had he not known suffering and poverty. And when Makima says there's no room for bad movies and by extension all suffering, Denji chooses to fight her. And this is the scene where the dog becomes human, where he takes up the risk of heartbreak so we can also have the opportunity for love. No longer a dog mindlessly living for one thing, but a person. Someone who can experience all of life and treasure all of the beautiful and tragic things it has for him. Someone who is able to understand a good movie because there are bad movies to help him learn. That is why I believe Makima to be the best antagonist and villain in modern shonen. Because her goal, who she is, and everything she represents and does within the show and manga stands in direct and dominant opposition to everything Denji could be. She builds him up, then breaks him down. She loves him, then pushes him away. She showed him good movies and let him experience a good life. which he can only appreciate and cherish because of the bad. Makima is Denji's opposite in gender, status, and power, but more importantly, she is his conceptual opposite. I've seen it said that Chainsaw Man is purely a tragedy, and that the message of the show is that life is simply a mess. However, I don't believe that's true. I don't even believe that the message of the show is that there is a neutral point about life either. I believe that Chainsaw Man is about accepting all of the suffering and accepting all of the joy. And even more important, that living and your life still matters, no matter how bad things get. Because all of those good things, that one movie you loved in the sea of the ones you hated, it was still worth it. And I believe that is the message we see when Denji stands up to fight against Makima in chapter 93. And the message for all of part 1 of Chainsaw Man. If you enjoyed this video about Makima and really Chainsaw Man as a whole, consider checking out our video on Denji if you haven't seen it and subscribing. We have more videos on the way. Also, join our Discord, link in the description. Until next time, keep dreaming.